Just waiting, and here we go. We're live. So good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Chris Kaplanis. I'm a professional triathlon coach, and I am the co-founder at RTA Triathlon. Before I go any further, I just want to thank Keith for organizing this. I really appreciate having the opportunity to speak to this audience. Anytime I get to talk to people that are interested in triathlon or considering doing one, or let alone doing a long course one. I am very passionate about this, as you'll be able to see momentarily if you can't tell already. So I love speaking to people on these topics. So here we go. Quickly, a little bit about myself. I am married to my beautiful wife. She is also my business partner and the head coach of RTA Triathlon. Together, we've been doing this for 10 years, full-time, professionally. So our only source of income is triathlon coaching. Crazy. I can't believe we're still doing it this long, but we are, and it's been awesome, and we've helped a ton of people along the way. So that's a little about us. We also have two beautiful children. My daughter, Ashley, she's 2 years old, and my son, Cameron, he's 6 months old. Both of them are awesome. We also have two dogs. So needless to say, our house is kind of like a circus every single day, but it's fun and I love it. So I wouldn't change a thing. So that's a little bit about us. Next up, just briefly about RTA Triathlon. So RTA Triathlon is a triathlon coaching organization and also a triathlon club. So quickly, our Tri Club is just a social way to connect with other people that like doing the same thing. We have athletes from our area, which is northern New Jersey, metropolitan New York City area, but also across the country. And we provide a lot of things both locally and electronically, discounts, group workouts, things like that. But basically, our whole goal of our Tri Club is to create a community and make an individual sport a team sport because it's just more fun that way. So we like to connect everyone. And then, of course, our coaching organization is really our business. And so for that, we offer training programs, all customized in preparation for whatever goal race or races you have planned. And we provide you daily workouts, give you specific targets as far as zones, paces, heart rate, power, whatever you have to your disposal. And basically, we help you along the way prepare the very best that you can and really just maximize the time you have available. So we work with a lot of busy professionals. In fact, we don't work with any professional triathletes. We just work with a lot of regular people that have crazy lives, but also epic goals, and we're here to help. So aside from our training programs, we also do one-on-one sessions. So for those locally, we'll see you in person to do a swim, bike, or run session. So if you need help becoming a better swimmer, if you want to learn how to ride your bike a little bit more efficiently or become a better runner, we'll work with you on a technique. Okay, it looks like I'm back. I'm sorry for that delay, everyone. And then the last thing we do, and actually one of the more popular things, are our training camps. We do 4 destination training camps a year, 1 in South Florida in the middle of winter, which is awesome. And then we do 3 up in Lake Placid, strategically timed for big races like Ironman Lake Placid, like Lake Placid 70.3, and then also other races. But we've done over 20 camps in Lake Placid. We know that the area well. In fact, we have a little townhouse up there, so we love it. Okay, so enough about that stuff. Tonight, we have a bunch of things to talk about. I'm going to move through some things quicker than others. If you have questions along the way, shoot a comment over to me, and I will elaborate. Otherwise, I'm going to spend a little extra time on areas that I think you might be more interested in. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about goal setting. then how to map out a season plan, how to sort of pick the best race for you. And then we'll get a little bit about training, which I think most people are interested in. Also equally as important is rest and recovery. It is very important, and usually the first thing that gets sort of pushed aside. Next, we'll talk a bit on race fueling, which is paramount when it comes to these longer races. And we'll also hit on a little bit of your daily nutrition. We'll touch on race execution, which again is also very, very important, especially for the longer races. And then finally, if we have some time left, we'll hit on mental fitness. Again, these longer races, they will test you both physically and mentally, for sure. So here's what we got going. And first up, we're going to talk about goals and expectations. I just want to check over to my friends on Facebook to make sure we're still going. We are. Okay, good. So goals and expectations. So what do you want to do? Is there a particular distance that you're looking to cover? Maybe you want to do a 70.3, a half Ironman for the first time, or perhaps you want to step it up to the big boy and do the Ironman. Do you have a time goal? Maybe you do. Maybe you're trying to do that particular distance for the second time, and this time you're trying to improve and you have a little bit of a reference, and therefore you have a new time. Are you looking to improve specific splits? Maybe you want to better your swim or have a faster bike or run. These are just different things that you want to think about, perhaps goals that you have in mind. And I recommend not just thinking about them, but also writing them down. You're much more likely to achieve your goals when they write them down. So just something to think about. And that goes for everything when it comes to goals. Next, if you're planning to do a long course event, i.e. a 70.3 or an Ironman, please make sure your family is involved. Make sure they understand the time commitment and what is involved, because you will have to make some sacrifices. If you don't fully understand what that commitment is and what those sacrifices may be, reach out to me, talk to any coach. You can do your research as well, but whatever it is, just make sure you know what you're getting into before you get into it. It will just save a lot of uncomfortableness at home. We don't want to cause any trouble at home. So just make sure everyone's on board. And when they are on board, it's the greatest thing in the world, because what's better than, finishing your huge epic goal race and hugging your kids at the finish line or hugging your spouse at the finish line. It's really pretty cool, especially when you can inspire them by doing something as crazy as that. And lastly, be realistic. Okay. So obviously you're not a pro, but you are training for a long course triathlon, so there is a little bit of time and commitment and training that is involved. So I'm not asking you to train 30 hours a week, but do expect to train, a decent amount to prepare yourself for the distance that you're going to go for. What are those hours? What does it look like? Well, it's really different for every person. It depends on your age, your experience, your available time, what your work schedule looks like, what your family and other social commitments look like. And that's what we do, really. We work with athletes to make sure that their plan fits their schedule and everything else they have going on. So we don't give them a plan and then they have to work everything around it. We find out what they have going on and then we work in their training. So just make sure everything fits. It just makes the whole experience a lot more fun and rewarding. Okay, so you definitely want to come up with a season plan, right? Without a plan, you're kind of going to be lost, right? And your plan is important because you want to make sure that your volume and your intensity sort of ramps up or is enough at the right time, and that it doesn't come too soon or too quickly, because really it can lead to injuries. It can also lead to burnout. So by having a plan, by knowing the amount of time from when you start training until your race day, and knowing what you're going to do in between as far as training and maybe other races, is very important, okay? It will set you up for success. Next, you're going to want to pick your A race, or maybe you already have your A race and you're sort of going to back into it. But with that being said, you don't want to have more 2 A races in a season, and having just 1 A race is not a bad idea. And the thought behind that is that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to be in peak fitness for more than 2 events over the year, because there is a taper that goes into a race where you sort of ramp down your training, and then also there's the recovery off of your race. So too many races equals mediocre performances, and so I'd rather you have a couple really good races with some other B-level races or C-level races as kind of like preparatory events before them. And I do recommend having sort of races before your big race. And that's sort of the next bullet here. And that is, I definitely recommend, if you're training for an Ironman, to have a half Ironman anywhere between 5 and 7 weeks out before that Ironman, okay? So this is gonna be an important part of your training. It's also gonna allow you to rehearse your race fueling and nutrition, as well as your just overall execution plan, pacing, things like that. Just responding to things that come up that you didn't expect. Because let me just tell you, the longer the race gets, the more unexpected things happen, and it's on you how you respond to those occurrences, what's going to sort of affect your final outcome and when you cross that finish line. So if you're training for an Ironman, I also would like you to have an Olympic distance race 2 to 3 weeks before your half. If your goal race is a half, then you're going to want to make sure that you have, that same Olympic distance race 2 or 3 weeks out of that half. You're also going to want to maybe throw in a sprint or maybe an Olympic. But definitely, if you have an Ironman, you want to do an Olympic and a half before it, if at all possible. And if you have a half, you definitely want to do an Olympic before it. And I also recommend a sprint. So they're all important parts of sort of your progression as you train and prepare for your big race. But with that being said, you want to avoid racing too much, because you can race yourself out of shape. If you're racing every week or every other weekend, you're not really going to get in the training required for your goal race. So if you're racing an Olympic distance race 3 weeks in a row, well, you're missing all of that training time and volume that you would supposed to be doing for your Ironman. So you just got to keep your end goal in mind and just not get into the pit of racing too much. I know it's fun and I love racing too, but again, keeping your goals in mind will go a long way. Race the distance that you're trained for. If you're training for an Olympic, there's no need to do runs that are 15 miles long, because the run is only 6, right? If you're training for an Ironman, well, I hope that your longest run is longer than 15 miles, because you have to run a marathon after a 112-mile bike ride, right? So just make sure that you're training properly for that race that you want to do. And look, for these longer distance races, I know I'm biased, but when you're doing a half Ironman or an Ironman, I would really encourage you to hire a coach, because there's just so many variables. You don't have to hire me, although I would love to work with you. But if you're not interested in hiring a coach, or if it's not in the cards for you, at least follow a training plan that is somewhat detailed, so that you have some type of progression. The only pitfall to a training program, like a pre-written training plan, is that it really is only good on the day it was written, because things change along the way. But in any case, following something is better than nothing, and I highly encourage you to consider one of those routes as you prepare. Makes sense? All right, checking in with our Facebook people. Cool. Next slide. Race selection, I'm going to breeze through this, but really there's a lot of different factors to consider, and you can read these notes here, but make sure that the timing of your race works with your personal schedule, your family schedule, and make sure that the time of year works with you. If you're going to do an Ironman in, let's say, May or early June, and you live in the Northeast or in a cold part of the country, you might not be riding outside on the road very much before your race. So you're going to have to get accustomed to riding your Peloton or riding your bike trainer for 5-6+ hours, because you have to put in the volume when you get closer to your race. So contrarily, if you do a race in July or September, you're going to have plenty of time to train outside. But on the same token, your busy times of year for work. If you have college-age kids, they're going away to school the end of August, the beginning of September, so you want to avoid any type of conflicts of timing like that. For your first long-distance race, I highly recommend picking one that you can drive to. It's really fun to do a destination race, but there's a lot of extra stuff that goes along with traveling to a race, especially an Ironman, i.e. packing up your your bike and getting it there, and all of your other million pieces of gear. So just things to think about. It's always fun to race with friends or groups of people. Get reviews from past participants, and also pick a race that suits your strengths and weaknesses. So if you're a terrible swimmer, don't pick a choppy ocean swim. If you're a bad biker, maybe you should think of a more flat terrain. Maybe not. Who cares? Hey, look, the main thing is Ironman is effing hard, and it's epic. So there really is no easy race out there. Even if it's flat, it's probably going to be hot as hell, or maybe there's going to be headwinds or whatever. But the point is consider your strengths and weaknesses, but just don't expect to find an easy one. You're not. They're hard. Okay. All right. Next, training. Okay, so this is probably what I would presume is what most of you are interested in. And the biggest takeaway from this is that I want you to make sure that your workouts are purposeful and timely. What I mean by that is there is a difference between exercising and training. Exercising is doing a lot of swimming, biking, and running, and just not really having a purpose for it. So yeah, you're in the gym or you're on your bike or you're going for a run all the time, but unless you can tell me exactly what the intentions are or what the purpose of that particular workout during that phase of training, then you're really just exercising. And that's fine, and it will get you in shape for a certain amount of time, but really what you want to do is train. And training has a purpose. Training has a definite sort of goal, and your goal is your race, right? And so you want to prepare and train for that race. You don't want to exercise for that race. Okay, so just make sure that there is a purpose behind what you're doing each day. If you don't know your purpose, or you can't tell me your purpose, then do a little research, maybe work with a coach, do something to have a purpose in what you're doing, and you're going to get way better results. With purposeful and timely workouts are various phases of training, because you won't do the same stuff from day one to race day. You're going to have different phases, and this is where something called periodization comes in. You might be familiar with periodization, but basically periodization is a way to sort of have different phases of training. So for example, one phase might be your base phase, where you're doing a lot of aerobic, low-intensity work, sort of preparing your body for the next phase, which is your strength phase, where you're doing hill workouts, incline on the treadmill, low bike gearing, hill workouts for cycling, basically engaging your sport-specific muscles. Following phase after that might be a speed phase, where you're doing a lot of high intensity intervals. You might be on the track for running and doing intervals for cycling. And then as you get closer to the race, your workouts are going to start to get more race specific. So the closer you get to race day, the more race-like your workout's going to be, the closer to race pace you're going to be. And these workouts are all done, like I said, on a timeline specific to when your goal race is. So generally speaking, as you get closer to your race day, your workouts are going to become more race specific. I just said that. Okay. Each workout, when I say should have a specific goal, what I mean by that is you might have an active recovery day. You might have a strength specific day, kind of like I was talking about, the big gear work, hill repeats, things like that, VO2 max, tempo, etc. There's all kinds of different goals a workout can have, and it can have more than one goal, but it should have a goal. And then finally, you don't want to be doing the same workout or the same kind of workout year round, because what will happen is you're not going to get the desired stress to elicit the desired result that you want. Your body gets smart, your body adapts, and so you have to constantly be changing it every several weeks so that you continue to improve rather than level off and plateau. So, and I'll talk about this next, but I'll say it while I'm on it. Or maybe It's right here. I don't even know. But you can't expect yourself to be in shape year round. Okay. Not one athlete in the whole world can realistically expect themselves to be in top shape year round. So don't expect it for yourself. Okay. This next part about training I want to talk about is something where most age group athletes fail miserably. So your workouts should be black or white. And what I mean by that is you're going to have days to go hard, and I want you to go hard. And then you're going to have days where you're supposed to go easy. Okay? And you might be sitting there saying to yourself, yes, I have those days. I go easy and I go hard. Well, the problem is most people don't go easy enough. So what I want you to do is go easy, and then go even a little bit easier. And you're going to say to yourself, Chris, I feel like I'm not even getting a workout in. This is garbage. But the reality is, if you don't go easy, you're never going to be able to go hard enough to get the stress and the results that we want from that hard workout. So think of your easy workout as something that is setting you up for your hard workout. You cannot go hard all the time. You might think you're going hard all the time, but really you're going kind of hard, not really hard like we want you to. So you need to go super duper easy on those easy days, and that will take care of our aerobic system that we're also trying to build up so that you can go super duper hard on those hard days. And ultimately what I want you to do is avoid that gray zone where so many athletes fall into. So black or white, when you're exercising, when you're training in the gray zone, that means you're getting a good sweat, you feel like you had a good run or a hard bike, but you didn't really go so easy and you didn't really go so hard. And this is the pit that athletes fall into. It is the biggest mistake that athletes make. And it's one when people contact us and they say, hey guys, can you help me? I've plateaued. I haven't really gotten faster over the last year or two or three. I'm not getting faster in this particular year. And it's because they're not training with a purpose, or they're always in a gray zone. And so this is why when we coach our athletes, we define their goals based on their current fitness. And that is key, their current fitness, not what you ended last year as, but instead what you are right now. And so we determine this by testing our athletes every 4 to 8 weeks, really depending on the time of year and that particular athlete and how they're progressing. But we test them in swim, bike, and run, and then we use those results sort of as benchmarks to see as how they're progressing throughout the year, right? We don't save our results for race day. We already know if you're progressing throughout the year, but we use the test results to establish and reestablish training zones, because we use those to insert them into our workouts, which again are specific and purposeful. So that will dictate what your hard run pace is, or what your hard bike wattage is, or what your hard or easy swim pace is. And as we retest, everything starts to shift and improve. And if it doesn't, we determine and we have that discussion what's not working before we find out on race day that you didn't have the result that you were hoping for. And then ultimately we use your latest training data and test results to give you a plan, a race plan to execute on race day. So when we coach our athletes, they already know what they're expected to swim, what they're going to do on the bike in order to set themselves up for a great run. Because if you know anything about long course triathlon, it is an epidemic of people walking on the run. And it's because they either didn't train properly, or they biked too hard, or both. So it's very important that when you're doing your race, that you bike at a pace that you know you can get off and run the entire run. So I would always prefer our athletes to bike 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes slower so that they can run the entire run. Because the moment you start walking on the run, the moment your pace per mile becomes like 20 minutes or whatever. But the point is, if you bike 10 minutes slower to have a 30-minute faster or a 1 hour faster run, I mean, you do the math, right? You get one finish time. It doesn't really matter how fast your bike split was if you're walking on the run and your finish time stinks. So it's triathlon, not swim, bike, and run. It's triathlon, swim, bike, and run. They all go together. And so knowing your paces, knowing what you can realistically hold based on your training and your testing data will set you up for success. And just a quick example I have here listed on the bottom is when I say easy, and when I say easy runs, it should be 2 to 4 minutes slower than what your expected race pace is. So if you expect to run a 10-minute mile for the Ironman marathon or the half marathon, your slow run should be 12-minute miles, because that's going to intentionally help you work your aerobic engine and your aerobic zone so that you physiologically can go longer and faster, more efficiently. If you don't intentionally target those zones, you're not going to sort of push the curve of your fitness. So just make sure that you're running slow and easy when you're supposed to, and don't be afraid to go that slow. Just a real quick example, I ran a half marathon a few years ago, and I ran all of my runs like a 9:15 minute per mile pace. And I'm not saying this to tell you how fast I run, but on race day, I ran at a 6:15 minute pace for the 13 miles. So my point is, I was literally taking my own advice, which sometimes I have trouble doing, but I was running 3 minutes slower in my training run to enable me to run at that very fast pace for the whole time, because it allowed my system to adapt and become stronger and more fitter to hold me through that whole distance. Okay? All right. So any questions with this before I move on? And certainly if we can take questions at the end. If you have questions, you can type them in. I don't see any at the moment, so I'm going to move to the next slide. But again, I can come back to this stuff at the end. Next up, rest and recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, training is all about stress and recovery. You stress your body in your workouts and your training, and in order to reap the fitness that you're hoping to, you need to recover. So you get stronger and fitter in periods of recovery. And it's something called supercompensation. Okay, it's a fancy word for basically you bust your butt in a workout, then you recover, but then after you recover, you come back fitter and stronger than you were before. And this is what happens over a few weeks, and then weeks on end. And these are the training cycles that we put you through. But just remember that you get stronger in periods of recovery. And I feel like I can hear someone out there saying, oh, well, then I'll just always recover and I'll just be super fit. It doesn't really work that way. You have to stress yourself first, and then you can recover. So proper recovery is often overlooked by most. And so just remember that you want to recover equally as hard as you kick your butt in order to reap the results that you deserve. And just a few things. When it comes to recovery, the number one sort of piece to the puzzle is your sleep. Don't cheat your sleep. So often do I see athletes cheating their sleep so that they can get up super early and do their workouts before work or before their kids wake up. And look, I admire that and I can empathize with that situation. But how many times are you up, past 10 or 11 o'clock at night, just wasting time watching TV or scrolling through Facebook or whatever you're doing, wasting time? When your day is done and you sort of recovered yourself after your dinner, get to bed. Get to bed so that you can get as much sleep as you possibly can so that you can wake up and have a good workout the following day. Sleep is so important, and I will even cut back athletes' training schedules and their volume so that they can sleep more. That's how important it is. Besides sleep, recovery days, literally having a recovery day. We schedule a recovery day completely off for all of our athletes, for most of them, because it's so important to just recover from all of the workouts that you've done the past several days. Having active recovery, going for walks, riding your bike, super duper easy, just spinning out your legs, going for a very easy jog or a very easy swim. Active recovery is very good. foam rolling. I feel like we all have a foam roller, but we never use it. Use it. It's a great tool to loosen up those muscles and work out the knots. Massage therapy, especially when you're going for long distance triathlon, I highly recommend trying to get a massage if you can once a month or whenever you can. It really helps keep your body sort of feeling the way you want it to. And also daily nutrition, right? If you eat well and you eat healthy, your body is going to love you, all right? It sounds corny, but you're going to be able to perform and recover better when you're eating well. And listen, I love ice cream, so I have, my vices too. We all do. I love my ice cream, and I'll never give it up. But for 70, 80% of the time, try to eat better. And remember also, and I'll talk about this later, but with all of this extra training comes extra calories. So don't try to cut out your calories because you're trying to lose weight. That is a big mistake. You're training and your body needs to be fueled so that it can do the training that it needs to do. So don't cut your calories, just eat a little bit smarter, okay? Race fueling. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a topic that I can and do talk about for over an hour at a time. So I'm going to give you the sort of quick and dirty here. First and foremost, race fueling is extremely important when it comes to half iron distance races and Ironman. If you don't do it at all, you will not finish. And if you don't do it properly, and if you don't practice it in advance, you might be taking trips to the bathroom that you don't want to in the middle of the race. You might just feel uncomfortable, or you might just have to slow down and you may not complete the race as fast as you were hoping. So it's super duper important. You have to think of it not as calories necessarily, but really as fuel for your gas tank, right? Your car doesn't run without fuel unless you have an electric car. Either way, it has to have some energy to go, right? Okay, so it is important that you integrate race fueling, or nutrition, should I say. And what I mean by that is, your gels, your powdered sports drinks. I prefer not solids like Cliff Bars and things like that, but you can if you have to. But this should be integrated into all of your training, and obviously your race day. And you practice it during your training so that you have it perfect for racing. But not only that, when you do it during your training days, you're going to have better workouts, you're going to recover faster, and you're just going to get fitter faster. Okay, and a lot of times I hear people saying, oh, I don't want to take the 300 calories for my 1 hour bike session, I'm trying to lose weight, I'm trying to watch my calories. Fine, except while you're training and while you're fueling yourself is not the time to cut your calories. And here's why. If you don't feed yourself and your brain and your muscles while you're working out and while you're training, you're going to finish your bike ride and you're going to go inside and you're going to grab the first bag of crap that you can, and you're going to stuff your face with a bunch of chips or garbage, and you're just going to spoil your entire calorie plan because you're so ravenous and hungry. So fuel your body, have a better workout, recover better, and then you're going to be a reasonable human until you can get a nutritious post-workout meal afterwards, right? And it's all going to fall in line with your sort of weight management plan if that's what you're working towards. Okay, so never go in to a training session on an empty stomach. You should eat, between 45 minutes and 1 hour in advance. If you do go in on an empty stomach, or let's say you're working out first thing in the morning, I want you to take a gel right away. A banana is also a good sort of thing if you don't have a gel. Bananas are high glycemic, so it goes right into your blood system, and your body can use it to fuel yourself. On race day, I would like you to eat your breakfast 2 to 3 hours in advance, really 2.5, 3 hours in advance of your swim start. So you're going to have your regular breakfast that you would have any other morning, not heavy, not, bacon and eggs, but, I would suggest like an oatmeal, toast with peanut butter, maybe some avocado, something that is not heavy, but also something that is going to absorb slowly in your system. So that's race day, again, this is a whole discussion, but when it comes to training and racing, what I really want to get down to is that you need to come up with a 1 hour plan. And you want to keep it as simple as possible, but there's 3 components in this 1 hour plan. You have your water, you have your calories, and you have your electrolytes. Generally speaking, water, fluids, 1 bottle per hour. Calories, 275 for men, 260 for women. This can plus or minus depending on how big or small or petite you are. And then you want to have your electrolytes. And electrolytes will be included in those calories that you take, I'm sure, like in your sports drink, but there's never really enough. So you're going to supplement with additional electrolytes. And these are what some people refer to as their salt pills. There's all kinds of different stuff out there on the market. If you're interested in what I recommend, email me. I can give you a bunch of suggestions. But basically, you want to have these 3 sort of pieces of the puzzle in your 1 hour plan. And I don't really care what you use, but I do prefer liquid calories because they're most easily digestible. Next in line would be like a gel, and then last would be a solid like a Cliff Bar or something like that. But liquid calories are most easily digested. If you do need to do something like a solid, just because you just crave it, make sure you chew it up really well. Your teeth or your stomach doesn't have teeth, so you want to really kind of like liquefy that solid so it can be readily absorbed. Your body doesn't want to send blood to your stomach to digest it. It wants to send blood to your extremities and your muscles to propel you through whatever sort of activity or discipline you're on. Okay, so that's a little bit about that. Number 1 is an easy 1 hour plan. This is repeatable. You're going to use this in training and in racing, and it's the same. For your longer course events, so for example, your half Ironman or your Ironman, or on training days when you're training 3+ hours, you want to have a little protein and a little fat as part of your sort of calories. And a lot of times, many companies offer long course fuels, and they include this stuff already. And basically what this does is it helps sustain your hunger levels, and it helps to sort of slowly release, but also kind of repair your muscles on the fly. So that is the only difference for your longer races. Otherwise, your 1 hour plan should be the same. And so one company that I like for nutrition is Infinite Nutrition, and they have their, I think it's called Speed, and that's for short course stuff for like sprint and Olympic distance races. So their Speed formula has no fat and no protein, but then they have their Go Far mix, which has a little fat and a little protein and a bunch of complex carbohydrates, which is meant for the longer distances. So 1 hour plan, and then being smart about what you're using in your nutrition. And look, there's a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of products out there. By practicing and training with this stuff, you're going to find some stuff works better than others. And that's great, because you know what? If something doesn't work, you can try the next thing, right? For me, I know goo gels, the goo energy gels, my body can't take them. I get side stitch. It's awful. All right. So I use other gel products from different companies. But finding out what works for you and what sits in your stomach at the intensity levels you plan to race on, which is very important, is a huge part of sort of preparing yourself for a good race day, and also having good training blocks. Following your workout, you have this critical 30-minute window. And this is when you want to have a high carb meal or drink, not protein, high carb, because this is going to replenish all of the glycogen stores that you've sort of used in your activity or in your training session. So your body uses carbs to fuel itself. Therefore, you need to replace it with carbs following. This is when your body is most readily absorb the nutrition that you're putting in the body. That's why the 30-minute window is critical, because your body is open and welcome to absorbing these calories and these carbohydrates. In addition to the carbs, you also want to make sure you drink some water, a glass of water, a bunch of water, whatever. You just want to rehydrate and recarb yourself. And then you can also go on from there. And then after you get those carbs in, you can go on and have, your regular breakfast or your lunch or whatever time of the day it is for you. But it's a misconception that you want to load up with protein following a workout. And that couldn't be further from the truth, because protein slows down the absorption of carbohydrates and also, more importantly, fluids. So it takes your body longer to rehydrate if you Okay, guys. Sorry for that. If your screen froze, I stopped speaking because I saw that. Point is, you have 30 minutes following your workout to get in a high carb drink or meal. 4 carbohydrates to 1 protein. 3 to 1 is your general agreed upon sort of ratio of carbs to protein. Very important. Don't overlook your sort of post-workout recovery. And by the way, they do make recovery drinks. Most nutrition brands have one, and I recommend you not skimping on that. Daily nutrition, I'm going to breeze through this just because it is a whole topic onto itself. But listen, when you're training, especially for a longer course race, it's important to understand that your body is going to require additional calories than what you would otherwise if you weren't training, okay? So make sure you don't deprive yourself of those calories. Just make sure that they're nutritionally dense calories. I don't want you to load up on calories from ice cream or like chips and things like that, but just more nutrient-dense calories. Your vegetables, your lean proteins, your lean dairy, things like that are always a good option. And don't avoid carbohydrates. That's nonsense. Your body runs on carbohydrates, and with the amount of training that you'll be doing, you're going to burn those carbohydrates. So next, hydration. This is a really big sort of thing that I encourage athletes to make as part of their daily habit and their routine. So often people don't drink enough water throughout the day. Your goal should try to be to drink half your body weight in ounces throughout the day. So someone like my buddy John Baxter is going to have to drink more water than myself. Either way, drinking a lot of water throughout the day is going to keep you well hydrated. It's going to set you up for a good workout. It's also going to help flush out your out all of the nonsense and garbage in your system. So it will help with your weight loss. It will help with your body composition by drinking a lot of water. And I got to tell you, you're just going to feel better. So force yourself to slowly drink more and more water as the days and weeks go on, until the point where you're drinking half your body weight in ounces or more. Yes, you're going to be peeing a lot, but you know what? It doesn't hurt to take a break from whatever you do during the day and give yourself sort of a brain break to go to the bathroom and relieve yourself. Just an easy way to sort of keep track of how many ounces you're drinking. I fill up a 35-ounce bottle of water each day, and I try to go through 3 to 4 of those. So yes, I drink about 140 ounces of water a day, and I weigh about 145, 150 pounds. But I've been doing this my whole life. And actually, I start the day before I allow myself to leave the house, before I allow myself to have a cup of coffee, I drill one of those bottles. And look, it takes practice, but I literally drink 35 ounces of water pretty quickly before I even allow myself coffee. So my reward is the coffee. But the point is, I'm starting off the day already having drank 35 ounces of water. And I encourage all of you to drink a little bit more throughout the day. But the point is, having a water bottle that you refill and knowing the amount of ounces that are in that bottle and trying to fill it 2 or 3 times or more a day will allow you to kind of keep track of like how many ounces you're drinking. You can carry a gallon of water around, but that's kind of corny. You know, I see people doing it, but there's better ways to do it. I guess more fashionable ways. All right. So what else? Listen, I think it goes without saying, but your body composition is important in terms of how fast or how slow you're going to move on race day, right? But also, there is something about being too lean. You don't want to be too skinny where your body is simply not strong and powerful anymore. But you do want to try to eliminate as much excess body fat as you can. One example I like to give is that for every extra pound of body fat that you lose, you're going to run 2 to 3 seconds faster per mile. So if you lose, 10 pounds of body fat, you're going to run significantly faster throughout your marathon or throughout whatever distance you're running. So stop spending so much money on your bike and all of the cool gear and all of that, and start to focus a little bit on yourself. You'll feel better. You'll move faster. Remember, it's not about the bike. It's all about the engine. It's about you. It's about how fit you are. It's about how, good you feel and how little extra weight you have to lug around. And this doesn't happen overnight, but it's something to work towards. Okay, race execution. So we're coming toward the end here, but race execution is super duper important, especially with long course racing. And I feel like I've said that race fueling is really important and race execution is now also really important. But really the reality is that the longer the distance your race is, the more exponentially costly any mistakes you make become. So race fueling, if you don't fuel your body, you're going to fizzle out. Race execution, really, you just want to make sure that your race results reflect all of your hard work and your true fitness. You don't want to go into a race saying, I know I'm going to do a 14-hour Ironman, and then let's say you ride your bike too hard and you walk the whole marathon, and next thing you know, your Ironman time is 16 hours when you know darn well it should have been 14 hours. Well, you did a poor job of execution. Maybe your adrenaline got away from you, or you got caught up in the race, or you were racing people on the bike. A lot of common mistakes, but proper execution includes proper pacing. And we pick out our pacing, like I said earlier, through our training data and our test results. Not what we did last year, not what we hope to do, but what we're actually at today. Because we want to be realistic. We don't want to overdo it. We also don't want to underdo it. We don't want to sell yourself short, but pacing properly is going to set you up for a complete and well-executed race. And remember, you can only control what you can only control, right? People go into races with race goals, and then the next thing you know, it's 95 and hot and humid. Well, guess what, guys? Your goals are going to have to be adjusted because the race conditions are not perfect, right? And you have to go with it. Don't be upset. Everyone's racing in the same conditions. So when it's really hot and humid, you're going to have to dial back your pacing that you thought you were going to do, because your heart rate, what was once going to be, X, is now going to be Y. And your body's not going to be able to sustain that. So you have to drop back your effort level due to the temperature and the conditions. So this is what good execution is about. This is what being able to adapt on the fly and sort of work through the sort of unexpected things that come your way on race day. And that's part of long course racing. Next up, your transition. Okay. I was talking with Keith yesterday, and he was saying how he's, he does well, swim, bike, and run, relatively speaking, but Jesus, transitions, they're just awful. Well, look at guys, transitions are one of the biggest things that I push on athletes, because you don't have to be the fittest and you don't have to be the fastest person to have a quick transition. Keep it simple, get in and get out of transition. And perhaps we can set up another webinar as race season approach to talk about transition. But really, it's you can rehearse it in advance, which most people don't, and just being sort of methodical and using common sense about how you have your transition set up and basically the order you do everything. You just want to be as quick and as efficient as possible and spend the least amount of time in transition as you can, because the reality is transition time counts to your overall time, right? So get in and get out of transition. Race fueling, another very, very important part of race execution. If you're supposed to be taking 275 calories per hour, guys, then make sure you're doing that every single hour. If you come to the end of your hour and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't taken any calories in, I'm just going to eat a bunch of calories. Your body's not going to like that. You want to take in those calories over the hour. If you get to the end of the hour and you notice that you haven't taken a sip of water, well, don't go ahead and chug your bottle either. Again, you want to take in those fluids over the hour. So practicing your race fueling in your training, in your your other races leading up to your big race, this will help you sort of refine your race fueling strategy and plan. And like I said, the longer the race, the more important race execution becomes, because the mistakes become exponentially consequential. So that's race execution. You don't have to be the fittest or the fastest to be able to execute a race, okay? And finally, mental fitness. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're doing a long course race, there's going to be a point where you're going to want to stop, or you're going to question why you're doing this, or you're going to want to walk. Don't do that. Use positive reinforcement. Think and act confidently. If you prepared yourself properly for this race, expect it to become difficult on race day, but also know that you've prepared yourself properly and you're going to finish the darn thing, and you're going to finish it the way you want to. So don't slow down, don't stop. These long course races, part of it is about testing you mentally and pushing your limits and seeing, where you think your limits are, but then going past those limits. So you just need to be mentally strong, use your head, and keep your head in the game. Okay? Remember, you can only control what you can control. And I always tell athletes to take a more process-oriented approach versus an outcome-oriented approach. And what I mean by that is process-oriented means doing everything you can control. You can control your race fueling, staying on your plan. You can control your pacing. You can control, your positive attitude. Okay. What you cannot control is you cannot control how fast you're going. You cannot control the headwinds coming at you. Cannot control the rain or the heat or the sun that's beating down on you. So don't worry about how fast or how slow you're going or about your time goals. Worry about executing the race and controlling everything that you can. And if you do that, more than likely at the end of the day, you're going to have the race that you had hoped to, or maybe even better. Okay? So next, you want to be able to control your arousal levels. So you don't want your adrenaline to get the best of you. You don't want your adrenaline or your excitement for the day of the race to take advantage of you and make you ride your bike faster than you know you should. Because as we discussed earlier, that's going to set you up for a mediocre run at best. Okay, imagery, thinking about a good performance that you've had in the past, thinking about maybe a place that you love being or hanging out, relaxing on the beach, wherever your happy place is. Just bringing yourself mentally to that place when you might be, going through, a tough patch in the race. Self-talk, right? Avoid negatives, meaning don't say, don't stop, don't quit. Don't say that, because your body, your mind only hears the word. They don't hear the negative. They hear stop. They hear quit. Instead, say, keep going, going strong, keep going, work it. You're feeling strong. You look great. Talk to yourself positively. Don't use the no's and the don'ts, because your body will not recognize that, especially when you're in a sort of deprived and state where you're not thinking as clearly. I feel like there was something else I wanted to mention here. Oh, yes. So also understand that you're going to have highs and lows throughout the day. So you're going to have times when you're just hating yourself and you're going to want to stop, but I promise you that those times will pass. And if you can't get past those sort of low moments, take a gel. Your brain probably needs a little glucose and glycogen. You might be depriving it. So if you hate what you're doing, if you're in a bad spot, just take a gel. And honestly, that more times than not, that will sort of flip the switch and get you back on track. Okay? Just remember that Ironman and Ironman 70.3 is a mental battle. Okay? It's mental and physical. All right. And lastly, there is no magic, especially when it comes to the Ironman distance. Okay? 99% of the athletes that are racing Ironman or Ironman 70.3, they've logged countless hours, and they've also made tremendous personal sacrifices. So there's no shortcuts, okay? If you have a race on the horizon, don't procrastinate when you're going to start your race or your training, okay? Don't wait until January 1st. Start today. Come up with a plan and start next week, but don't put it off. Race fueling has to be practiced. Okay, and that also means nothing new on race day. I don't want you to be using the bananas and the pretzels on the race course on race day if you haven't practiced with them. Okay, so nothing new on race days. Practice your fueling. You don't want to have GI distress. You don't want to be taking unwanted visits to the porta-john along the way. And finally, race pacing must be realistic, executable, and it has to be based on your real and most current data. Don't think you're going to run a 7-minute per mile marathon on the Ironman unless you've done that in your training. And also, by the way, if you've never done a half Ironman or you've never done an Ironman, don't expect your run time from an open half marathon or an open marathon to be so close to what you're going to do for your triathlon. Okay, there is a little bit of a difference. And if you don't pace yourself properly throughout the day and you don't execute your race plan as you should, it will be a lot of bit difference. But just don't expect what you ran in your open run race to be what you're going to do in your Ironman. So just the expectations have to be there. After you've done it, okay, but just be realistic. Okay? This is part of what we help our athletes do. We come up with a race plan for the races so that it's realistic for them to accomplish. So that's all I got for you guys. I hope you found it beneficial. I think I took